host, Warda Siraj, and in today's episode, we have a very special guest with us. Today, we'll be speaking to Anne Bermonte, who is Assistant Deputy Minister in Business Partnerships and Programs, Ministry of Economic and Development, as well as Job Creation and Trade. Of course, she will share her experiences with the MPP program, her work in the government, and recent project she's been working on, especially with COVID. Let's get right into it. Okay. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. I'm so excited to speak to you about your experiences.
Thank you. Well, it's my pleasure and good to meet you.
I feel like you can give us a better introduction about yourself than I can, so why don't we just start with that?
Great. So I'm currently the Acting Assistant Deputy Minister at the Business Partnerships and Programs Division at the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade in the province of Ontario. So lots of words. I thought maybe I'd say them all instead of using what we normally do in government, which is use acronyms, just because there might be some viewers who don't know what MedCat stands for, or what BPPD stands for, or what an ADM stands for. So I thought I'd spell that out. I've been in this role for about 4 months. I was the director in the same ministry for talent and entrepreneurship. But when COVID hit, the government had to act very, very quickly, which it has. And so there were some organizational changes, and there were a lot of resources, including the ADM who was in this role before me, who was moved to help with, identify supply chain for PPEs in order to be able to ensure that our frontline workers had the protection they needed in order to deal with what was happening in the province back in mid-March and April. And so I was asked to step into this role, which I did, which I thought was my obligation and, something that I should do in order to support the effort. So I've been here for a short time. It feels like I've been here now for, it's been busy. It's been a very, very, very busy time. I've learned a lot. I've really welcomed the opportunity to move into this senior role. I've got a great team. I've been in the OPS for over 16 years. And then before that, I worked in the private sector for about 4 years. And then before that, I actually started my career out working in arts and culture. So I worked at the Toronto Council for 16 years. And that's where I sort of found my pathway into public policy, if you will. Mm-hmm. So looking at arts and culture policy, moving into economic policy. And then that's where I've spent most of my career working in the OPS. So I hope that gives you a sense of what.
Great. That's such a rich background, especially with the OPS. I know Ryerson University has strong ties with the OPS and really encourages students to have their co-op placements over there. So going all the way back, before you even applied to the MPPA program, what was your background and why was it this program that really caught your attention?
Yeah, so, I've been sort of thinking about going back and doing a master's. In fact, I actually did a certificate program in public relations at Ryerson through the Chang School. Okay. So I'd already had a positive experience with Ryerson. I had, it had been a while since I completed my undergrad. And of course, I launched my career, I got married, I had kids, and then it's like, I'm kind of interested in maybe starting to build up my going back to school, building up some, academic credentials with respect to some of the theoretical work. And, it's interesting, I was actually thinking of doing an MBA. And then I spoke to my director at the time, and I was working in the small business ministry. So this has got to be around 2007. Oh my gosh, it's all starting to melt together. Around 2007. And I said, I'm thinking about going back to school. My kids were at an age where they were a little more self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. I said, I'm thinking about doing an MBA. And I actually started to look at some executive programs. And then he looked at me, he said, Anne, he said, you work in the public service. Have you thought about doing, a master's in public administration? And I said, That sounds like that makes a lot of sense to me. So I think, I certainly looked at some other programs. I looked at Queen's, I looked at York, looked at U of T. I liked the Ryerson program for a couple of reasons. One, as I mentioned, I had already had an experience, positive experience with the Chang School, continuing education. So that was great. It also offered options that I didn't find were available through the other schools, master's programs. So the part-time, because I was still working, so I wanted to do it part-time. The fact that I live in downtown Toronto, so it was very convenient. It was very convenient for work from home. And also that it offered, 3 streams, so you could do the course stream, you could do the major research project, or you can do the thesis stream. And so I chose to do the thesis stream because I had been a practitioner working in policy and in government for quite a number of years throughout most of my career. So I thought it would be kind of fun to do, a lot, to sort of really dive into an area that I was quite interested in. So that's why I did the thesis stream.
Thesis stream. Okay. And did you find that as a part-time student, you were still able to get that rich material that full-time students had? Do you think there was a big difference?
Well, I mean, doing a master's is very different from being an undergrad. Like it's very different. I mean, it's not the undergrad experience whatsoever, at all.
Yeah.
So I'm a very mature student. So I wasn't looking for that experience either. I was really very, very focused on the academics, right? And, but what I found, there was opportunities to, get to know some of my the cohorts in my class. And what I found really interesting is that it was actually a variety of different ages and experiences that had come to this program. So, they all didn't come from poli-sci, going into, public administration and policy. There were, they came from all different kinds of undergraduate streams. And also, like me, there were a number of mature students as well who were also doing it part-time. So I actually found it very interesting. I found it, as somebody who, at the time when I did the program, I was a manager. So I was actually in a role that allowed me to hire, and certainly to hire co-op students and summer students. And so I found it really interesting to know who's out there, to, get to know, like to also be exposed to different thinking that, is of generations outside of my generation. So I found that very stimulating because I think, working in an organization like the OPS, I mean, you're working with a diversity of individuals with diversity perspectives and experiences. And so for me, I value that. So I like that kind of, the fact that it was a very eclectic group. It wasn't a homogenous group on a number of levels. So to me, that was part of my experience.
Right. Okay. So even before the program, your experiences have been so amazing. So I guess networking, would you say, would contributed a lot to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So important. It's I call creating your own luck. Because you never know where that conversation that you had with somebody even 3 years ago may, where that may result, right? So I think, networking sounds very superficial, but I think that it's important from the perspective of, getting to know who's out there. If there's an area that you're interested in, learning about it, finding out who the people are, letting them know who you are, what you're interested in, because you just never know. And those opportunities, that synchronicity sort of happens where you're actually having the conversation with the right person at the right time, the right place, and all of those pieces sort of come together for you. And I have to say, for me, that's actually happened throughout my career on numerous occasions. In fact, that's one of the reasons I found my way into the OPS. That's for the reasons I found my way into different roles within the OPS as I've sort of advanced in my career. So yeah, that's incredibly important. And for any student out there, like go out there, and if there's somebody that you want to meet with or want to talk to, you should do it, because they're going to be looking for individuals. They're going to be looking for talented young people. So they'll want to know, who's out there, who's interested, who's got the, certain experience, expertise.
Right.
There's, the talent has to continually be developed. And so I certainly encourage students, as they're completing their program, to make an effort to reach out to, to individuals in the public service, whether it's in the province, at the federal government, or at, in municipalities.
Right. That's some really good advice. I know a lot of people say as long as you become even a familiar face, it could take you a long way. So what are like 2 or 3 top skills that you think are most crucial for the position you're at right now?
For the position I'm at as an ADM?
Yes.
Political acuity, really important.
Definitely.
Leadership. I've got a team of about 120 people behind me. So it's about, working with my immediate team, who would be the folks in my office and my ADMO, my directors, the managers, but leadership, making sure that people are supported, understanding what their needs are, and really important as a leader is also learning about how to bring the best out in people. How do you support them so that they can succeed? Because if they succeed, you succeed and the organization succeeds. So to me, that's incredibly important. And I think a sense of being able to plan,
Right.
like planning your time management, planning things out. Sometimes things get pretty crazy, but if you have a sense of what needs to happen, who needs to get involved, working within an organization like the OPS, there are a number of different processes that need to be complied with, and therefore you can't just turn something around on a dime. Although I have to say, under COVID, we've actually done an amazing amount of work in making things happen very, very quickly. I've worked on a couple of projects where that's been the case, where things that would normally take about 6 months to 8 months have actually happened in about 3 weeks. So
Go into detail about 1 or 2 projects that you've worked on just recently?
Yeah, so I think certainly one of them was the workplace PPE supplier directory. So as we were starting to, the government announced a framework back in April on reopening the economy. So we were hearing from a number of different businesses about where they can access PPEs. So there was also a number of manufacturers that were really struggling. So there was also an opportunity to maybe help to stand up domestic production, especially around some PPE. So there were a couple of key elements to developing this. And so we pulled together a multidisciplinary team that included individuals from the Ontario Digital Service, so they're responsible for managing the content on the website, from our government cluster service, so that's IND-IT, so they're responsible for a lot of the back-end IND-IT issues that we had to manage. For my division, I had one of my branches who actually designed what the directory would look like, how we would launch it in terms of who we would, post when it was first launched. We also had legal. We also talked about, so we launched with certain companies that have already been pre-approved by the government. then how do we get new companies to join the directory? So there's a vetting process. So another part of my branch was responsible for that vetting process. And then, of course, there was the feel and the look and making sure it was user friendly, because we're trying to make sure that what we do here in government is something that is user friendly, so it's easy for anybody who's using our services, our resources, to be able to navigate through quite easily. Mm-hmm. So we pulled all that together and we launched within a month.
Wow.
So that was quite an accomplishment. So it's up there. It's Ontario/ PPE, ontario.ca/PPE. Mm-hmm. So, and what we're doing and what we've also done is we've identified those companies that actually have a manufacturing footprint in Ontario, because that's really important. We do have a lot of companies that are part of a supply chain, an international supply chain, but for Ontario, it's really important to also have manufacturers. So we've identified Ontario manufacturers with a little Ontario flag. And we have different categories of PPEs. And we also, because in my division, I'm also responsible for innovation technologies. So I wanted to make sure that there was a category for digital technologies and apps, because we know how important they are in terms of helping businesses reopen and helping individuals feel, and workers, work and shop and eat and dine, safely. So that, and it's, another thing too that we've been learning in government, like is taking something and making it iterative. So we don't see the PPE supplier directory as a fait accompli. I mean, we continue to tweak it, to improve it, to gather input, user feedback, to understand how we can make the experience more seamless and more beneficial for the companies that have listed on the directory. So I think right now, we have over 864 Ontario companies. I mean, that's one of the criterion to be on the PPE directory, is that you must be an Ontario company. And if you are an Ontario manufacturer as well, you get that flag. So that's just an example, I think, of one of the ways that we've pivoted very, very fastly here in the OPS in order to respond to a global crisis that has also affected our province.
Right, that's so incredible, and just by the sound of it just seems like you don't have a typical day of work. I feel like every day for you is something new.
Yeah, that's the fun part, and that can be the challenging part as well, because you think your day is going to go a certain way, and then all of a sudden there's a request to do this or to do that. So things, can sort of change on a dime. As I said, I'm very well supported by an experienced team, and that makes a huge difference in being able to pivot. I mean, so, the whole word, the pivot has always been associated with, startups in the tech, the tech ecosystem. But in government, we really had to learn how to pivot, how to be agile, how to apply lean processes. So, we're really starting to adopt and adapt to those opportunities that will make us more responsive and continue to make us responsive to the citizens of Ontario.
Right, that's amazing, and you've had so many incredible experiences. You definitely know what you're doing. It's so great to hear about your experiences. Can you say in confidence that the MPPA program courses align well with the work you're doing well? In other words, when you look back and think about the courses, can you say, right, whatever I learned here, it's actually happening here? Can you say?
Oh, totally, absolutely. I mean, what I really enjoyed about Ryerson was it was very it was very kind of practical, pragmatic.
Right.
It was pragmatic. I mean, learning how to put decks together. I mean, we talk decks in government, right? So that trying to understand, take complex concepts, complex issues, and being able to communicate them, in a way that a layperson or somebody who doesn't have that background or expertise can understand what the issue is. I think some of the, the theoretical work, it's interesting because sometimes it aligns with what I've lived as a civil servant, and sometimes it didn't. But the framework and learning about the framework and learning about, what went into developing the theory, I thought was, incredibly helpful. And I do find myself every once in a while sort of reflecting back to some of those classes and thinking about, okay, well, maybe it didn't quite make sense for me at that point in time in my career and in my life. But there are other projects that I'm involved in where I'm sort of thinking, I should go back and kind of reread what so-and-so wrote about this particular aspect of policy, right? So, anyway, yes. So I think it sort of touches on all those elements. So, very much the pragmatic, teaching those skills around, communicating, distilling, understanding the context, understanding the theory, so you understand, where the policy piece is. Also understanding what is involved in, in pulling together a policy. So what are the various elements that you need to think about when you are working on a policy? And perhaps you're not working on developing an overall policy, but maybe you're part of the delivery of whatever policy was adopted, or is in regulation or is in legislation. So I found it incredibly useful. And also, I've built such a great relationship with Carolyn Johns, so I definitely want to do a shout out for her. She's fabulous. She's been such an incredible supporter. She was my thesis advisor, and I'm so pleased that we've been able to stay in touch. And, I do what I can to support her and to support, Ryerson students. My ministry accepts co-op students from all universities, of course. But always, great to, see that, Ryerson students have come through some of our programs. So that's very satisfying. And also, I'm always open if any student wants to come and talk to me about my experience or wants to get some advice. I'm always open to that as well. So I certainly value my connection with Ryerson. I value my relationship with Carolyn and also with, Frank D'Onofrio. Frank is amazing. Frank is a former deputy minister. And, I think he's done a terrific job with the co-op program, and also with that practicum that they did, where they have the, I can't remember what the name is, but it's the one where they have.
Oh, it's the enrichment?
The enrichment.
Friday, yes.
The enrichment one. I was actually asked to sit in to help the students as they practiced for their finals, and that was really satisfying. So it's so I still have quite a number of attachments with Ryerson, and I certainly continue to support it, and I feel like I've valued immensely from having gone through the program. So I'm so glad I didn't do an executive MBA and I did my MPPA at Ryerson instead.
It's worked out so great for you. It's been so nice talking to you, learning about your experiences. I know I definitely learned a thing or two, and I'm sure listeners or future students can benefit from all that you had to say. Thank you so much again for your time.
My pleasure, Warda. Anyway, all the best.
Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode and you got to learn a thing or two about what it's like working in the government, especially during such times where there's a lot of panic, there's a lot of tension. Hopefully you also got to learn about how important experiences can be, whether they're big or small. They can definitely get you a long way. Until next time.